Good morning, or depending on when you're listening to this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and I was always told I had a voice for radio, so I've made a podcast all about the Pokemon trading card game.
You're listening to PTCG Radio.
So starting off with a little bit of news this week, the first and most important piece of news is that Worlds next year will be held in Vancouver, in Canada, on the west coast. This makes it much cheaper for Europeans, and for people like me and my friends here in the UK, it is brilliant. Instead of over £1,000 and 2 planes, which not including the changeover take about 15 hours, we can have a nice 9-hour direct flight, which looks like we can get it for around £700. That is fantastic. For some of you that live in the US, it is also drivable. Now I know those of you living on the east coast of the US, etc. would have a hell of a road trip, but 2 or 3 days you can drive it. It is potentially doable. Either way, I imagine for a lot of people, even Americans, it's going to be cheaper than getting to Hawaii. You will, however, need a passport in the US. This is the first international Worlds, so if you are a US citizen listening to this, make sure you've got a passport. I'm hearing some rumours that for citizens in Washington with an enhanced driving licence or something, you don't need a passport, but if you're going down that route, make doubly sure that that is definitely the case. Now, of course, this isn't brilliant for everybody, and some people still want to see a return to the East Coast, which hasn't happened for many a year. Personally, I'd quite like to visit somewhere like Florida or New York, but at the end of the day, we do have to think about the Japanese players, and the East Coast really isn't good for them. It is an international World, though it is a start. I would love to see a properly international World the following year, somewhere like Japan or maybe even somewhere like Europe. And I know a lot of people share my opinion. However, it is a US-dominated event, which is run by people who set up in the US. So I do worry that it's not going to be properly international, by which I mean outside of North America, for quite some time yet. The other piece of news about this is that it isn't in the Hilton. It is at the Vancouver Convention Centre. Maybe this means their contract with the Hilton has ended, or maybe it's just they're taking 1 year off. The big question it leads me to is, where will everybody stay? One of the things that was brilliant about Worlds at the Hilton is that everybody knew Worlds was at the Hilton. All the players that got paid invites stayed at the Hilton. It meant that the Hilton was a base. Even after hours, the days before, Hilton was where everybody was. Having said that, the paid invites will have to put the competitors up somewhere, so the likelihood is that wherever those paid invitees get put up, that will become the official Worlds Hotel, and of course as soon as I know, I will let you know. Other pieces of news I want to run through are again very much Worlds centric. This is going to be a podcast all about Worlds. For those of you that's wondering what you get in the Worlds bag, this was a bag given free to all competitors. You got a nice little hat, which was white rather than the black one that the staff got or that you could buy in the shop. A shirt, which was black, again, to differentiate it from the blue translator shirt, the green runner shirt, the red staff shirt, or the white public shirt. You got a Pikachu plushie, a Worlds deck box, a DS cloth, which as far as I can see was exclusive to the competitor's bag, a funky luggage tag, which was exclusive to the competitor's bag as well, other things like a pencil and a few stickers, which aren't really worth mentioning, a funky little Worlds pin, which was again exclusive to the bag, and the most exciting thing in the bag was the Worlds promo set. Now the promo again this year, as I'm sure many of you already know, was a reprint of Tropical Beach, which was the Worlds promo from last year, with different art. Personally, I prefer last year's art, but I'm hearing a lot of people saying that they prefer this year's art. And my love of Tepig does somewhat explain why I like last year's. Now the World set, you get that promo in a lovely little binder, and you get it in 7 different languages: English, Spanish, Italian, German, Portuguese, French, and Japanese. The other cool little piece of news is that there is another new Tropical Beach this year, and that is a Champions Tropical Beach. Now you've always got Tropical Beaches for top 32, top 16, top 8, top 4 and finalist. This year there is a brand new Tropical Beach in that the winner got 2 Tropical Beaches stamped with finalist, as well as all the others. Now I don't want to focus on many non-Worlds things this week, but I will briefly mention that the Pokemon trading card game official online program is in the process of being put back up again. It is going back up on the website. You are going to be able to play it again soon. Originally scheduled for midnight Greenwich Mean Time yesterday, then put back till 11, and it's since been delayed, and at current predictions is going to be going up at 10 PM GMT tonight, although don't be surprised to see that put back. One thing I do want to say, I've had a look on the forums, and I'm not going to go through much forum gossip this week, but one thing I do want to do is shame a little bit the people who have been going on the forums and saying, this is ridiculous, it's been put back, this is absolutely horrible. And I would like to point out that we're not being asked to pay for this program, and we are being given a free code in every booster pack, every theme deck, and every tin. Now, I know that booster packs have gone up very slightly recently, but there is this thing called inflation. All goods cost more over time as money becomes worth less. So prices were always going to go up. Now, personally, I haven't seen a huge, if any, difference in booster packs due just to the codes. So this is essentially a free program. And I think rather than berating Pokemon for taking a little longer than we'd like, we should be thanking them for giving us this awesome new program. I intend using it a heck of a lot, and when it is online, I will tell you how you can try and find me and play me on that. The last thing I wanted to mention very quickly was the shop at Worlds. Now, it was open to the public on Saturday and Sunday. There was also a special 2-hour opening just for staff with badges and players who had qualified with their competitors' badges on the Friday evening. And queues in the shop that day were roughly 3.5 hours. It was absolutely ridiculous. The shop officially closed at 7 PM, but the people were still in the queue and going in till 11 PM. All they did at 7 was close the queue. The stuff was very reasonably priced in the shop. You get a deck box for $10, a Pikachu plushie for $10. It was quite fantastic. The mats were either $10 or $15, I forget, but they were very reasonably priced, a heck of a lot cheaper than you're going to find on eBay. On the Saturday and Sunday, you could get in the shop far more easily, but of course a lot of the good stuff like hats and mats were already gone by then. Now what I want to do quickly now is just do a very, very quick World in Numbers little segment. So 10,000 is the value in dollars of the giant inflatable Pikachu they have hanging in the ballroom. Cost them $10,000 to make. 3,000 is the value in dollars of transporting said Pikachu to Hawaii. This might explain why next year Worlds is in Vancouver, just above Pokemon's base in Washington. 3 million is the budget for Worlds. It costs them $3 million to put on, and I also heard rumours of a $3 million marketing budget, taking the total cost to $6 million. 127 is the number of players in the Masters Division, and 16 was the Top Cup. Now before Worlds I spent a bit of time in the Open Play Room on Wednesday and probably far too much time in the Open Play Room on Thursday, and I sat down with some fairly prominent players to get their thoughts pre-Worlds. So what you're going to hear now is interviews with Kyle Sucevich, Jay Hornung and David Cohen that were recorded in the Open Play Room on that Thursday. So, Kyle Sucevich, otherwise known as Puka, you run the Top Cut website. Can you just give us an overview of that, what it is, why you do it?
Sure. The Top Cut, we're a group that's trying to provide video coverage and streaming for events, just trying to grow the game and just make it more accessible to newer players, to older players who want to just watch more of the game. We're trying to make it more professional, make it more legitimate, and just make it so everybody can enjoy the game more.
Superb. Now, you're one of the championship point leaders in America at the moment. You've amassed a huge amount of championship points, won and cut a lot of events. How did you do it? Just briefly, tell us your secret to success, if you will.
I don't know if I have a secret. When I was younger, I practiced a lot, and I just developed my skills. I learned how to play, and then that just kind of sticks with you. You have to try to adapt to the newer formats, and the important part is just finding people to test with, making sure you have good partners that can just kind of give you good ideas to bounce back and forth. And I mean, if you can just kind of find a good deck list, work together with your friends, that's just the way to do it.
Superb. And the question I've got to ask, what's the play for World? I'm assuming you've been testing a lot of different decks. You've got a testing group of some of the top players, at least in America, if not the world. What's the play?
Right now, Darkrai looks really strong. We've seen a lot of the straight Darkrai decks do very well. So I think that's one of the decks that's going to be very popular. But I think the deck that most people are worried about is the Excelgor deck, with the Chandelure and the Mew Prime.
And why is that so worrying?
just once it gets set up, there's nothing you can do. It just locks you out of the game unless you play cards like Unknown Cure or Espeon. So I think that's a deck that's going to do very well.
And the other question I want to specifically ask you, you're a big fan of Eels, you played it for a long, long time, and the Top Cut as a whole really pushed Eels ahead of Nationals, and it had with the exception of Kevin Nance's second place, it had a fairly underwhelming showing. Ever since Nationals, it's absolutely exploded, and it's more popular than it ever was. Do you have any explanation for this? What's changed?
I think the matches we were able to record from U.S. Nationals were very good. It showed a lot of very talented players, very high-level matches, and we got to add live commentary as well. So people got to witness what it was like to watch the event, even though you weren't there. And I think that was a big step forward for not only us, but for the game as a whole.
Superb. Well, keep doing what you're doing with the Top Cut, and good luck for the tournament.
Thank you very much.
So I'm here with Jay Hornung. First of all, congratulations on getting third at US Nationals. Can you briefly tell us what deck you did it with?
Yeah, I played a Darkrai Mewtwo deck. The list is on the Top Cut and 6 prizes and stuff like that, so I think everybody's pretty familiar with the deck. But yeah, the deck wasn't mine. Mike Diaz came up with it, and just a lot of the New Jersey players. So like, it wasn't my deck at all. I just got lucky enough and played it. So
why is it so good?
I honestly haven't figured that out yet. I honestly wasn't going to play the deck. I didn't like it. I just had nothing else to play. But it just works really well. It kind of, just how the meta goes, it kind of has an answer for a whole bunch of different things. So I think that's what makes it good, is it just really doesn't have any auto losses, and it kind of has an answer for a lot of the, just basically anything you play against. So I think that's what a lot of the top players like, is they like to sit down at a table and realize that, you know, no matter what they're playing against, they got a shot at winning it. So there's no bad matchups is probably the biggest thing going for the deck.
Indeed. I mean, I've been hanging around the free play area here for the last couple of days, in and out, and the most popular deck I've seen, other than maybe Eels, is Darkrai Mewtwo, and everybody seems to be playing a very, very similar list. Are you expecting people to be playing this a lot, and do you expect it to do well?
Well, like, I mean, this game is in such a media era. I mean, you know, like, with the Top Cut, 6 prizes, podcasts like yourself here, like, it's just so hard to, like, you know, lists aren't secret like they used to be. I mean, you know, I posted my list. Kevin's list pretty much got out. I mean, you know, the list that Kyle posted on the Top Cut, I think, was like 2 or 3 cards off from it. So, like, you just have all these people that have the list, and everyone's kind of been working on it too. So, like, it's not like people are kind of trying to guess at what the list was. Like, everybody has this list. They know it's a list that's done well at, you know, a major tournament. So, like, I think that's what leads to a lot of the popularity of it.
So what do you think is the play for Worlds? What have you been thinking about? What do you think stands the best chance of going deep, or maybe even winning the whole thing?
Oh God, just to be clear, you're asking me this on Thursday night, so I don't know what the Japanese are playing and the grinders and stuff like that, and that's definitely what I'm going to watch for, you know, before I make any sort of real decisions. Is, you know, what are the Japanese playing? Is there any secret decks that I don't know about, you know, and stuff like that. It seems like every year there's some really cool stuff that kind of comes out of the grinder that does well, so that's definitely what I think people should look at. I mean, you know, it seems just basing around the open play area, stuff like Eels and Darkrai are obviously going to do well just by the sheer numbers that they're being played, regardless of, you know, a lot of the other stuff. So I would have to say Eels or Darkrai are probably going to be the big 2 decks that I expect to do well. So,
but there's probably something secret in there which is going to come out. We just don't know what it is yet.
How's it going, man? You know, I don't know. I think there's probably going to be little tricks and stuff like that. Like, you know, there's so many different ways to tech decks and stuff like that, you know, everybody's got a couple cards difference, and those cards is what decides a lot of the matchups. So
superb. Well, congratulations on your 3rd place at Nationals, and good luck for the tournament.
All right, thank you.
Right, David Cohen, hello. You are the reigning world champion. Just take us back very briefly to last year. What did you play? How did you win?
Okay, so I played Magnivore just because I figured the entire field would be a lot of Reshiram. It had a terrible matchup against Yanmega, but Yanmega also lost to Reshiram a lot of the time, so I just figured the Reshirams would beat out the Yanmegas, and I would hopefully play more Reshiram, which ended up being the case. I played 1 Yanmega throughout the day, and he just didn't draw very well. He had terrible luck.
Superb. Now, going into Nationals last year, everyone thought Magnivore was amazing, everyone thought it was a play, loads of people played it, and it tanked massively. Bearing that in mind, why would you take it to Worlds?
Well, no one played it with twins at Nationals, and that was actually like one of the key cards that made it really good. So at Worlds, it was still a little bit inconsistent just because it was impossible to fit in everything you wanted, but it still had a great matchup against Reshiram. Like, even if you went down a couple prizes, you'd still end up winning just because of Rayquaza Deoxys being able to take 2.
So it was more of the meta game rather than the deck itself, if you will.
Yeah.
So what about the last year? I mean, this tournament season, have you been playing a lot? Have you been winning a lot? Or have you been kind of kicking back knowing that the pay trip's in the bag?
I haven't had time to play much. When I have played, I have not done too bad, so that's my solace. But I have not done anything notable this year. I had to skip nationals and most of the states and regionals due to school and things.
So how confident are we for this year of Worlds? Do you think you're going to cut again? Do you think you can go quite far? Or are you feeling... How do you think it's going to go?
I'm hoping to make cut at least, just to prove to myself that I can do well again. I have my doubts just due to lack of practice and things like that, but we'll see how I do.
And can I ask what decks are in contention? What do you think is a good play for Worlds this year?
I really like Eels just because it has so many options, it's consistent, and you can still go aggro with it if you need to. I've never been able to play Vileplume decks, except Machamp Vileplume. That's just because it was all aggro. So I hate playing Excelgor, I hate playing against it, but it's still a great deck, so I have to prepare for it, regrettably.
Super, well thank you very much and best of luck.
So I'm going to talk now very briefly about the Grinder. The Grinder had 204 people entering this year, which is about a third of the amount they had last year, but remember last year was in San Diego on mainland USA. It is, curiously, about 50 people less than they had 2 years ago in Hawaii. Either way, that gave a maximum of 5 rounds if you made it all the way through, and that gave around about 50 round 1 buys to make sure that they had exactly 128 for the second round. Now, there were a lot of very notable players in the Grinder, and what I'm going to do now is give you a rundown of a few of the players who were particularly exciting, players who you might have expected to get through the Grinder. We had people like Frank Diaz from the US, who got top 4 in 2010 after grinding in, and also managed a top 8 finish in 2008. We had Aaron Curry from the US, who qualified for Worlds in 2006 and 2010. Drew Holton of the Top Cut popular website, also from the US, who qualified in 2011 and 2010, and managed top 32 in 2008 and 2009, along with some early successes. We had Ben Potter, also of the Top Cut, who grinded in 2010. Ben Stuart Armstead of the UK, who qualified for Worlds in 2008 and 2011. And possibly the most decorated person in the Grinder, in terms of Worlds finishes, we had Sammy Sekkoum, who got top 32 in 2011, top 8 in 2008, and had qualified in other years including 2009. We also had Yuta Komatsuda, who grinded in the past 3 years, 2008, 2010 and 2011, as well as getting top 4 in 2007 and being the 2004 undefeated World Champion, which, actually thinking about it now, makes him possibly more decorated than Sammy Sekkoum. We also had a few people who were very prominent seniors who had yet to make much of a mark in Masters. There was Faris Sekkoum from the UK, who got top 16 in 2007 in juniors, qualified in 2008 in seniors, and got top 16 in 2011 in seniors. We had Mike Diaz, who's been there every year since 2007 in juniors and seniors, including a top 8 seniors finish in 2010. Nick Fotheringham, who got 3rd in seniors in 2009, and also qualified 2006, 7 and 8. And I know some of you are thinking that people like them may not be particularly intimidating. You've got to bear in mind that yes, a lot of juniors and seniors don't go on to be great players, but generally the players who consistently get into Worlds or Top Cut Worlds do go on to be good Masters players. You only have to look at people such as David Cohen and Ross Cawthorn, who both got 2nd in seniors one year, and then went on to contest the final in Worlds last year. And the Grinder threw up some very surprising results. In round 1, Frank Diaz got paired against Faris Sekkoum and unfortunately went out. Round 1 also saw people like Nick Fotheringham and Drew Holton going out in round 1. So what I'm going to do now is very quickly talk you through my Grinder. Unfortunately, I didn't go through and record after each round like I did at Nationals, but to be perfectly honest, I didn't expect to do that well, which is why I didn't bother. So round 1 I had a bye, which was gratefully received because when there are 5 rounds and you need to go undefeated to get through, a free win is nothing to sniff at. It also meant I got to have a good look around, see what people were playing, and tweet some things out to my followers who have been very good to me. In the second round I played Igor from Brazil in a CMT mirror match, and it went exactly as I'd planned. I started Tornadus first game and I went aggro Tornadus, taking cheap prizes off his Celebes and Smeagol's which he kept benching. In game 1 I had a big Mewtwo Shaman play to take out his Tornadus when I was already 2 prizes up. He then returned the KO with his Mewtwo, giving me a very easy final 2 prizes. Game 2 I again took some cheap prizes, manipulated when the Mewtwo War start and ran very easily. Johnny Hall had gone through the CMT mirror match with me. We'd played it out a few times and he's very good and he discusses it with me, and between us we had worked out exactly how to win the CMT mirror match, and this came into play here absolutely beautifully. In round 3, unfortunately I was drawn against Sami Sekkoum. Unfortunate because he's amazing, also unfortunate because it's a player from the UK and truth be told I expected him to grind in. He was playing Darkrai Mewtwo, and my thanks here go to George Boone, who'd been playing that deck for a long time, and I'd played out this matchup in excess of 50 times and really gone through exactly how to win. And it really is starting early Tornadus, putting the pressure on, then starting getting some Darkrai kills with Terrakion when the chance opens up, not dropping Celebes down too early so they don't get killed, and again just really taking one Mewtwo prize when the chance comes out. And that's exactly what I did. In both games I whiffed catches and plus powers when I needed them, and this led to annoying things like land crushing for 160 or retaliating for 160, and that was very frustrating. In both games he played it so incredibly well that he actually got me down to 1 prize, which I hate doing because if you get end to 2, you draw a card, you've got 3, Junkam is useful. You get end to 1, at the beginning of your next turn, you draw a card, and even if you get a Junkam, you can't use that. But he did that to me both games. Game 1, he ended me to 1. He then drew a prize, which happened to be a Juniper, and I portraited that Juniper, having saved my Smeagol till the end of the game so it didn't get knocked out too quickly. It was one of my plays I used to try and avoid that late game end, which CMT is so vulnerable to. Game 2, he did the same thing, but unfortunately I drew absolutely nothing, which was annoying because I drew 2 cards from a 10-card deck and I had 3 outs. For the mathematicians among you, you'll have already worked out that gave me a 60% chance of drawing the win, and I had 1 supporter left, it was a Juniper, and 2 random receivers with the win in deck, so I most definitely had it. Into sudden death, I won the flip for the second time in this match, and I started Tornadus to his Darkrai. And this basically meant that I was always going to win the damage round, because the only way he could stop me KOing the Darkrai before is to put something else down, but he wouldn't be able to get energy on both. So either way, I was always going to get attacking first, and I was always going to get the KO first, regardless of any Eviolites. And I knew he didn't play Enhanced Hammer. That meant that I got to use my DCEs to their full effect. In round 4, I played a man called Rico from the US, a huge, giant, muscly man that everyone had seen around the convention centre that weekend, or the hotel I should say, and although he looked intimidating, he was one of the genuinely nicest players I'd ever met. Very polite, very respectful, very easygoing. He was also playing Darkrai Mewtwo. And as I just played this exact matchup with Faraz, it made it a lot easier. The games were very similar. I put on early pressure with Tornadus. He did play Enhanced Hammer, so I had to be very careful with my DCEs, only attaching them right before I attacked. And I never actually went more than 1 turn with a DCE. Every time I attached it, he Enhanced Hammered it on his very next turn. And then I got the kills with Terrakion and Mewtwo, and this game went much, much more smoothly. And that led me to the final round. I forget the man's name, unfortunately, but he was from the US, and he was playing straight Darkrai. And game 1 was the weirdest game I had ever played. I started Lone Terrakion, I went second, and I whiffed a supporter for 4 straight turns. In most games, that would be enough to lose. He hit my Terrakion, I'd drawn a max potion so I max potioned it. I put down a Tornadus, he then got his Darkrai with 2 Special Dark and an Eviolite and a double plus power, one of which he junk armed for, and got the 1-hit KO, expending a huge amount of resources in the process. I then in 1 turn, through a combination of Switch, Smeagol, Celebi, Portrait, Juniper, etc., I managed to get a Terrakion with 2 energy and a plus power and one hit KO his Darkrai, at which point he immediately scooped. Game 2, I did my trick, which is one of my favourite tricks and very rarely works. I spread some energy around the field. I then dropped a Shaymin and Terrakion, dropped a plus power and Lang Crush for a KO. He couldn't possibly one-hit KO that Terrakion in one turn, so the next turn I got a second Darkrai KO. He then played a Dual Ball, got double tails, and without being able to get up a Darkrai next turn, he scooped and I got into the grinder. At this point, I would like to give a special, very, very special thank you, in fact, to Derek Wheatley, who helped me out with the sound bites on this very podcast, who had given me encouragement and support and play testing throughout the grinder. I couldn't have done it without you, Derek. I was very surprised to get through the grinder. I certainly didn't see it happening, but it meant that I got the bonus of going through Worlds. And it was pretty funky because I then got taken aside and interviewed by Kyle Sucevich for the Top Cut, which is kind of surreal, as just the previous evening, about 16 hours previously, I'd interviewed him for the podcast. So it was a nice reversal of roles. And if you Google Ross Gilbert on YouTube, or even if you just Google the Top Cut Pokemon, you'll find that interview quite easily. And thank you for the Top Cut for doing that, because it gave me a chance to plug my podcast in a new form. And that left the final 8 people in the grinder. They were Aaron Curry playing Zekrom Electric, Stefan Tobacco playing CMT, Mike Diaz playing Darkrai Mewtwo, myself playing CMT, Yassine Sekkoum playing straight Darkrai, Nobuo Yano, who I believe was playing Darkrai Hammers, Daichu Ueki, and I have no idea what he was playing, and Tomohisa Kanda, and I don't know what he was playing. And like every podcast, I'm going to apologise for my pronunciation. There's going to be mistakes later as well. In terms of the UK players, there were 7 people who entered. Nick Fotheringham and Mike Lamb both fell out round 1. Ferris Sekkoum made it as far as round 3. Ben Stewart Armstead made it to round 4. Yassine and myself qualified, and that left Charles Barton, who went out heartbreakingly in sudden death in the final round when he had the win and he Ultra Balled for a Shaymin to find that after having to discard his early Shaymin with a Juniper, his second Shaymin was prized. And I will remind you that in sudden death you have only one prize, giving a 1 in 60 chance that that prize will be his Shaymin. He then went out in sudden death the very next turn, so my condolences to him. And that brings us to Worlds proper. Now, there were 127 people, and that gave us 7 rounds and a top 16. We were a single player short of having a top 32. Now, I believe in previous years they have run a top 32 with less than 128 players, and I really would have liked to see that this year. What effect that had was that 4 threes could not make it in on cut, although you would think that probably they shouldn't. However, it meant that a number of 5-2s, we believe about 14 out of 24 was a calculation somebody did during the tournament, so that could be wrong, actually missed out on Top Cut, and that seems very bad to me. So all I'm going to do now very quickly is give you my Worlds report and show you how that went, and again, this wasn't recorded at the time. Something that is worth mentioning here is that I will do a full written report for both the grinder and my Worlds run on 6prizes.com. I'm going to give you a quick rundown and flavour here, and if you want to see my exact list, my explanations for that list, and more detailed descriptions of my games, please check out 6prizes.com in the next couple of weeks, where hopefully my report will be posted. Now, the reports were somewhat odd when we got around to Worlds. Puka of the Top Cut, him, one of the most decorated players in US Nationals history, finished 2-5. As did Kevin Nance, the man who got second at US Nats this year, Tom Dolezal, who got top 4 at Worlds last year and top 8 at Nationals this year, and the defending champion David Cohen, all of those players winning just 2 out of 7 games. Now, I wouldn't have chosen CMT if I was going to Worlds with an invite. It actually did a lot better than people predicted it would, being taken all the way to top 8 in one case. But I didn't see CMT as a brilliant choice. It is very susceptible to N. It's got those Celebes which are too donkable for my liking. And I really would have wanted to play something like Donphan Mewtwo or Kyurem or something a little bit weird, because I play weird things throughout the season. But I'd just gotten through the grinder with CMT, I knew it like the back of my hand, I knew every play, I was intensely comfortable with it, and I was tired after the grounder. I played 2 games purely because I was waiting for my girlfriend who was in a shop queue, no other reason, and I didn't even change a single card. I wanted to go into Worlds feeling comfortable. So I went in with CMT. It wasn't necessarily my first choice, but really it was the only thing I knew how to play well enough. Now, I'm not going to give you a huge rundown, but I'm going to very quickly take you through my games. Turn 1, I played Ty Smith playing Exalgor. Now, the game itself, he had a very slow start. By the end of his first turn, he had a Mew and a Relicanth. But unfortunately, I went second, and I whiffed the one-turn KO, which I very rarely do, and that was enough to basically lose me the game. He played it well, he set up brilliantly, and he did everything right. He played the deck very well. Sportsmanship, it was Worlds, and obviously it was a tense time. He did call a judge to give me a warning after I'd asked my friend how he did, and he was right to be annoyed at that, because I certainly should not have been talking to people outside the play area. I was embarrassed that I did, and I apologise sincerely for doing so. I don't think it deserved a warning. After we both later then got a warning for sloppy play, he did ask the judge if I should get a more serious penalty, as I'd already received another minor warning for a different thing. I don't think Ty's a bad guy. I'm sure he's a lovely guy in person, and I've heard from a lot of people saying he is. But I wanted to bring this up just because I know it's Worlds, but that was my very first Worlds game ever, and it really put me on edge and created a very bad atmosphere. I don't blame the guy because it was a very tense situation. I bring it up so that other people listening can bring that up. So yes, Exalgor went second, thoroughly beaten. I forget the man's name, he was from Brazil, he played CMT, and I had the mirror match down, as I mentioned in my grinder report, but in short, the first 3 turns I portraited and hit 3 different Junipers. The only supporters of my own I hit were Juniper. I had a chance to win on the last turn, but I was 1 energy shy of doing so because I'd got rid of so many resources early game. Those early Junipers really hurt me, although to be honest I probably played this game a bit too sloppily. Round 3, I played Grafton, who had a paid invite for coming 3rd in seniors of previous year. He was from Canada. He was playing Embor RDL. Now, I stupidly benched a Mewtwo early game, and he then managed to kill that with an RDL to take 3 prizes, putting him up 4 prizes to 1. But I then got the return KO with my Tornadus to get 2 prizes back. I end him, and from then on, I made sure I had no supporters in my hand, he drew dead, and I just captured 3 easy prizes on the bench, 2 Ninetales and a Smeargle for the win. Round 4, I played Zach Lesage from the US, and he was playing, I think it was in Canada actually, my apologies, and he was playing straight Darkrai, and I love playing straight Darkrai because I play Terrakion. And this game went exactly as you might imagine. I got 2 easy KOs on Smeargles, waited for him to take kills, and then got the retaliate with a plus power with my Terrakion. The game went very smoothly, my deck ran like I expected it to. Round 5, I was somewhat humorously drawn against my good friend Tommy Roberts, who I play every Tuesday at League. I in fact played him last night at League, but we played again in Worlds. Now he was playing a weird rogue deck that he had somehow gotten the list off of Yamato for. It was a deck Yamato was going to play in Worlds, and it basically used Jirachi as energy acceleration, and it played Mewtwo, Terrakion, Tornadus, etc. to try and counter all the main metagame threats. Now, at this stage, I was 2-3, and both the people I'd beaten had dropped from the tournament, so my resistance was horrendous. So I played Tommy, and long story short, I started Mewtwo, and I drew past my first 2 turns of the game. He had 3 turns before I'd done a single move, and there was nothing I could do to win. Round 6, I played Pablo Meza from Mexico. He was playing Exalgor, I had to turn 100, he started low Oddish, I went second. And again, he played this perfectly. He actually took the game, he kept my Tornadus EX locked up for several turns, and he set up a turn where with Curse Shadow, he managed to kill my Tornadus EX and a Smeargle and a Celebi to take 4 prizes in 1 turn and close the game out. So that left me 2-4, and with my last game against Carl Peters, the ridiculous championship point getter from Germany, playing Darkrai Mewtwo. And I actually hear that he won 7 regionals and states last year, which is, quite frankly, phenomenal. So I started with a lone Celebi, hit double tails on Dual Ball and Junk Arm, 2 things I wanted in order to get out of Smeargle. I started incredibly slowly. He 2-hit a Tornadus with Mewtwo and then KO'd my Mewtwo with his to go 4 prizes up very quickly. Now I managed to 2-hit his Mewtwo without him taking another prize, and in that time he'd killed my Terrakion. So basically he had 1 prize left and I had 4. So I end him to 1, and I killed his Mewtwo. When I end him to 1, he drew a random receiver, and top-decked a random receiver. both of them came up as ends, and he had 2 ends, and I think 2 junipers and a pont in his deck. So I got incredibly lucky that he drew both his ends. He then ended himself to 1 and drew nothing. He needed just a catcher for the win. We would later find out that that next card was a catcher. And he ended me to Mewtwo Juniper. And on my turn, I dropped a Mewtwo, got the Juniper for a double colourless, and finished the game out of a win. There is absolutely no way I deserve to win that game, and I count it as one of the luckiest wins I'd ever had. And my apologies to Carl Peters for beating him in that game that I quite frankly had no right to do. So I finished 3-4, which isn't as high as I'd hoped, but it's quite respectable. My 4 losses, we had the 2 Exalgor when I went second, the game I drew dead, and the game I kept portraiting Junipers. But to be honest, after the grinder on Friday, I had very much a job done attitude. I don't think I played as tightly as I could, but I was just there for the fun of it. So that led us to the top 16, and what I'm going to do now, just like I did at Nationals, I'm going to run you through very quickly the matchups from top 16 onwards. So in top 16 we had Sami Sekkoum from Great Britain playing Speed Darkrai, who beat Dylan Bryan of the US playing Terrakion with Mewtwo and Tornadus, Shaman and Smeargle. Michael Diaz of the US playing Darkrai Mewtwo beat Adrian Locke of Canada playing Darkrai Terrakion. Igor Costa of Portugal playing Darkrai Mewtwo Terrakion beat Xavier Chu from Singapore playing CMT. Yuta Komatsuda of Japan playing Darkrai Mewtwo beat Clifton Go of Singapore playing Exalgor, and he beat him 2-0 without taking him to time, and I would love to have seen how he did that. Stefan Tobacco of the Last Chance Qualifier from the US playing CMT beat Roberto Shirasago from Mexico playing Darkrai Mewtwo. Jay Hornung of the US playing Darkrai Mewtwo beat Aaron Curry of the US playing Eels. He also grinded in. Michael Pramwatt of the US playing Darkrai beat Stephen Mao of Germany playing CMT. And Harrison Levin of the US playing Darkrai Mewtwo beat Patricio Gonzalez Walsh of Argentina playing Darkrai Mewtwo. That led us to the top 8, where Michael Diaz of the US playing Darkrai Mewtwo beat Sami Sekkoum of Great Britain playing Darkrai. Igor Costa of Portugal playing Darkrai Mewtwo Terrakion beat Yuta Komatsuda of Japan playing Darkrai Mewtwo. Jay Hornung of the US Darkrai Mewtwo beat Stefan Tobacco CMT. And Harrison Levin, also of the US, playing Darkrai Mewtwo, beat Michael Pramwatt of the US playing straight Darkrai. In the top 4, Igor Costa booked his place in the final, beating Michael Diaz, and Harrison Levin beat Jay Hornung in a Darkrai Mewtwo mirror match. And in the finals, as I'm sure a lot of you are already aware, Igor Costa of Portugal's Darkrai Mewtwo Terrakion beat out Harrison Levin's Darkrai Mewtwo to take home the title. Congratulations to Igor, Harrison, Michael and Jay, all of whom have already booked their place with paid invites to Worlds next year. And there are some interesting things thrown up from here. Firstly, Jay Hornung, after his top 4 at Nationals, now has 2 paid invites to Worlds in a row. All 3 of the US competitors who got through the grinder actually made it through to top 16. Yassine Sekkoum of the UK, narrowly missing out. Sami Sekkoum went 7-0 in Swiss for the 2nd year running. That man has not lost a Swiss game at Worlds for 2 years. And he unfortunately lost in top 8, meaning he will have to qualify again next year. Harrison Levin, a lot of people hadn't really heard of him, but he did go 9-0 at US Nats of Exalgor, and he followed that impressive result with 2nd place at Worlds. Europe has their first champion since 2007 and their 2nd champion ever. Jack Stewart Armstead and Yassine Sekkoum from the UK get my commiserations for narrowly missing the top 16, and Jason Klaczynski, the only 2-time world champion, also narrowly missed a top 16 with 5-2. And what this really tells me is that we needed a top 32 at Worlds this year, and I think it is somewhat of a travesty that we didn't actually have one. Now, I do want to give a comment here on the commentary. The Worlds was streamed live this year, and there was a commentary with it. A lot of people were somewhat surprised that the Top Cut didn't do the commentary, but you've got to bear in mind that they are in no way affiliated with Pokemon. They're not official people, and Pokemon really couldn't control what they said, which made it a very risky move had they actually gone that way. Now, I don't know who the people actually were that commentated, but I hear they are actually employees of Pokemon. And they have achieved a lot of criticism. Firstly, the commentary was very much for beginners, not experienced players. They didn't have that experienced commentary of what plays should they make or pointing out misplays. For instance, in the final, at the very end of round 3, Harrison Levin went searching for a Shaman to move his energy around to win, and apparently the commentators didn't know that he was searching for a Shaman. Having said that, maybe Pokemon didn't want that. The finals and the commentary could have been seen in two ways. It could have been giving proper top-level coverage to people who wanted to go but couldn't, or it could be giving an entry into interested parties, getting them to watch the final and thinking, oh, I want to go there next year, and getting them into the game. And if it's aimed at people who want to get into the game rather than people who are already here, then giving beginners commentary is really what we want to do. There were, however, a lot of glaring errors which I think were very bad. Anyone tell me what the card Trash Claw is? Doesn't exist. It's actually called Junk Arm. In the same way Professor N isn't a real card, it's just called N. Now, I personally haven't watched this, so I am giving this anecdotally, but I did watch one small part. I chose a random piece, and in the random piece I chose, they were explaining why people sleeve their decks, and they were saying that a lot of the cards have different backs, even though it's only Japanese and English that do, and they were saying how we wear sleeves to disguise this. They said how you could have German cards and English cards and Japanese cards in the same deck. Now, this is actually untrue. If you are in Europe, then yes, you can have English and German cards in your deck, regardless of which European country you're from. But if you are in the US, you can have neither Japanese nor German cards in your deck. And if you're in Japan, you can't really have English cards in your deck, so I'm told. And this is actually a very bad mistake, because if I were to go out and buy, say, a cheaper Secret Rare Rayquaza from Japan, if I turn up to a tournament in the UK to try and play that, I'm going to be told I can't play it. So mistakes like this could actually lead to people buying cards which are not allowed to use in tournaments. Overall, I think it's a brilliant thing that the finals were streamed, and I think the commentary was well-intentioned. But I think that even though putting it for beginners was not necessarily a bad choice, they really did need better informed people doing that commentary. And I apologise to anyone who thinks that that is not the nicest opinion. So to sum up my chat of Worlds, I've been talking about Worlds for a while, and the reason is I was there and I can give you a very good perspective on it. What I would say is, if there is any way that you can make it to Vancouver next year, I would go along. It doesn't really matter if you haven't qualified. I qualified and I loved it. It was fantastic. And playing in Worlds was great, but for me, playing in Worlds was only ever a bonus. It's so much fun there that it doesn't really matter if you got an invite or not. The atmosphere, and I know this is a massive cliche, but the atmosphere is amazing in Worlds. You meet so many new people, and generally, especially if you're not playing them, they are ridiculously friendly and lovely people. I ended up meeting people on the Thursday and Friday that I would then catch up and chat with every day until I left. The grinder is amazing, and it's something that I would recommend everybody to try at least once. Everyone wants to try it. Nobody really wants to go out in the grinder, but that's the nature of it. It is a fantastic experience and a very, very fun tournament. Ignoring the grinder, there's still open play, and you can play loads of random people. As an example, on the first day, I ended up playing Chase Maloney in a couple of practice games, and he ended up being the Seniors World Champion. So that was a couple of fun games to have. And if you play the league in the open play during Worlds on the Friday, Saturday and Sunday, you get a number. After you play a game, you take your number up and you get given free stuff just for playing. Mike Lamb, although he didn't have the best luck in the grinder, just from the league, over 2 days, he ended up with a golden catcher, a full art Darkrai, and one of those lovely black play Pokemon mats, which I think you'll agree, for absolutely nothing, isn't bad going at all. I would say though, if you're going out there, Worlds is amazing, but Worlds really is 5 days. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then it's all pretty much over. So if you are making a trip to Vancouver, make sure you go for more than just Pokemon. And this brings to an end my slightly longer Worlds podcast. And I know a few of them recently have gone a bit longer, but this one, as I brought you interviews with 4 truly world-class competitors and a complete report from getting through the grinder, I think I can hopefully be forgiven for that. Please don't forget to email me at ptcgradio@hotmail.co.uk. Now, I know a number of you have, and I've got a few emails to reply to. I apologise for that. Rest assured, you will all be getting nice replies to that in the near future. And if you do email me, I can promise you will be getting a reply. So please do email me at ptcgradio@hotmail.co.uk. Ask me questions, tell me what you want to hear about in the podcast, or just give me a little bit of feedback of what you've heard. You can also find me on Twitter at TheWassy, and if you do that, please do check the coverage I gave of Worlds. I did tweet a lot about Worlds and give some, what I believe to be rather good coverage, and you'll be getting that for tournaments going forward if you come and follow us. Thank you to everyone who's been helping me to promote this, 6 prizes, Pokemon Dan, Dot Deck, etc. And don't forget to check back next Wednesday for another episode. I haven't talked about the new format yet, but rest assured from next week onwards I will be giving you a complete rundown of everything you need to know about the new format, tricks I've discovered, decks you should be listening for, and of course reports from every tournament I go to. I'm also hoping in the new season to bring you an interview with the winner of every tournament I go to, as long as I get their consent, of course, so you can hear about what's winning and why they're winning from the mouths of the winners themselves. I've been Ross Gilbert, and you've been listening to PTCG Radio. So we're sitting here on Sunday with Sammy Sekkoum, who's just taken a top 8 finish at Worlds for top cutting for... How many years in a row have you top cut now, Sammy?
I'm unsure, to be honest. I missed once, is all I remember, so pretty regularly.
I think that makes you the most consistent player in the history of Worlds. What did you play this year and why?
I played a straight Darkrai deck. It was just 4 Darkrai, 2 Smeargle, and then a bunch of disruptive trainer cards plus a consistent support line. That's it. And special Dark Energy too.
I think one of the most interesting things was you actually managed to go XO and Twist for the 2nd year in a row. Is there any secret to the consistency?
Just simple decks. When you see the deck list that Jason's going to post, very standard, very consistent. I played it in the gaming area the whole week, in the open gaming area the whole week. I refined it based on what I was seeing in the gaming area, and that pretty much has mirrored what we saw at Worlds, to be honest. And the deck did great for me.
And for those of us that watched Game 3, you drew pretty much completely dead in Game 3. Considering it was a bad matchup and you managed to win Game 1 in spectacular fashion, do you feel a bit hard done by?
I feel hard done by because I managed to make a game of Game 3 even, like it would... I managed to make a game of Game 3 even though I drew completely dead at the beginning of the game, and then we got into a back and forth game where I was going to come out on top, but he hit a really big 5-card end and hit the max potion, which basically crippled me at that point.
Well, I'm sure you're going to be back next year in Top Cut, and again, thank you very much for talking to us.
Thank you very much, it's a pleasure to do this kind of thing for you.
Well, thank you for that, Ross. It was both informative and stimulating.